Welcome back to my series where I'm ranking every single Doctor Who companion, and today we're going to be talking about the new series companions. Originally, I was going to break it up by decade like I did with the classic series companions, but I thought, you know what, let's just rank them all at once. So from Rose Tyler all the way up to Belinda Chandra. The new series is a bit strange compared to the classic series where you have a lot of consistent travellers in the TARDIS who aren't necessarily companions, but they are series regulars. So if I haven't included someone you consider a companion, I'm sorry. And you can complain about it in the comment section below, that's totally fine. I'm wrong, I get it, it's cool. All right, let's not waste any time and let's start with Rose Tyler. I find Rose a really interesting companion because I feel like she's so different compared to which Doctor she travels with. When she's with the Ninth Doctor, they're still figuring each other out. And I think Billie Piper and Chris Eccleston have such great chemistry. And then when she travels with David Tennant, it's a completely different vibe. You can instantly tell these two have known each other for a lot longer now. They feel more established in their relationship. And you can tell that Rose is completely in love with the 10th Doctor. And there's a completely different feel. I think Rose makes for the perfect first companion for the new series. I think she's quite relatable, she's very down to earth. Considering the last classic series companion apart from Grace was Ace, and she was also very down to earth and the stories were more focused on her. I really like that Russell decided to do the same with Rose. You know, it was more about seeing the TARDIS through her eyes, and I think that's what makes the show really successful in the new series. I also think Billie Piper is just an incredible actor, and you know, she may or may not be the Doctor now. Who knows? I don't know. I don't think Russell T Davies knows. I don't think anyone knows. And that's something that's happening. But every time I see Rose on the screen, I'm usually having a good time. I think I prefer her more with Christopher Eccleston, but I also do enjoy her with David Tennant. Just season 2 is just not really my favourite season in Doctor Who. Next up, we have Captain Jack Harkness. I put Jack in the great category. I think growing up, you know, this character was really important to me as a queer person. You know, seeing this sort of representation on screen when I was in high school, I didn't have any gay friends. So, you know, this was like the only way I really saw gay people were on television. And, you know, seeing someone like Captain Jack, who is this bisexual, I think we'd probably categorize Captain Jack as pansexual nowadays. And I think his character was a bit ahead of its time. And I really appreciate that sort of storytelling within Doctor Who. And also, of course, I'm a massive Torchwood fan. That's how I found Doctor Who. I watched Torchwood first and then went into Doctor Who. And that's, of course, because it was a gay character on television. You know, I watched a lot of interesting shows just because they had gay characters on, because I was a very lonely teenager. So, you know, Captain Jack will always have a special place in my heart. And yeah. Next up, we have Donna Noble. Catherine Tate is instantly up to the best of the best. I would say Donna Noble is probably my favourite new series companion. I think she's just incredible. I've put her here because her first story is that Christmas special. So, you know, usually I would say series 4, but we're just trying to do it in chronological order, okay? Just let me do it. Catherine Tate and David Tennant have such incredible chemistry together that they just make everything seem exciting and funny and interesting. I think there's a misconception that comedic actors can't do drama well. And I think Catherine Tate is one of those people who disproves that instantly. And I think Doctor Who actually has a goldmine of comedic actors who come in and are brilliant dramatic actors as well. And I think Catherine Tate is excellent as Donna Noble. I think one of the scenes that really sold me on Donna in the early days was Fires of Pompeii, in those final moments where she's begging the Doctor to save someone, you know, and you really, really feel it. And you can tell that Catherine Tate is like acting her heart out. You know, it feels like she has something to prove and she's going out of her way. And an episode like Turn Left, which is such an incredible episode of Doctor Who, and not just an episode of Doctor Who, but just television in general. Like, she just comes out and she nails it. And it shows that she can just handle the whole show by herself. We don't need David Tennant coming in. Catherine Tate can run the show, she's fine. I think Catherine Tate should have been the next Doctor, maybe, if we're gonna bring back just random people, just any old person to play the Doctor, it should have been Catherine Tate. Just saying. Next up, we have Martha Jones. I've also put her in the great category. We're off to a really good start. I think these early companions in the new series of Doctor Who are just really, really, really good. I think Freema is yet another one of those incredible performers who is just electric on screen as well. And she adds so much heart to the character of Martha. You know, the Doctor doesn't treat Martha nicely throughout pretty much any of her run on the show. And because of that, you sympathize with her even more. And I think she also had like a really tough role to do as well. You know, she had to take over from Rose Tyler. And, you know, for a generation of kids who have never watched Doctor Who before, you know, Rose is the only companion they've ever known. So you really have to try and prove that, no, this show has life without Billie Piper. And if you ask Russell T Davies today, the show doesn't have life without Billie Piper, and that's why she's back. That's a joke. It's a joke. We're just laughing. We're just having fun. But I think Freema shows that the show can survive, but not only survive, but grow. And that's why Martha's so great. And I also love that Martha appears in Torchwood and she fits in so well. And it's sad that Martha hasn't really come back since the end of time. You know, I feel like out of all the people to be a part of UNIT to show up in the new series and that, it should be Martha Jones. But you know, Freema's an actor who's in demand, she's booked and blessed. I'm just thankful we had her in the first place, but it would be great to see her return. Next up, we have Amy Pond. I put her straight up to the top of one of the best of the best. I think there's something special about Karen Gillan. And I think that's why she's obviously gone on to have this massive career after Doctor Who. You know, she's just electric on screen. And I also think the character of Amy Pond is so sad, but also so fun. I just love how we're introduced to Amy as a kid. We see her grow up and her relationship with the Doctor and how that all grows is so interesting. The Doctor left her for all that time. There's this sense of sadness at her core. And I think it really grounds Amy Pond because, you know, a lot of her character is up in the air. You know, one minute she has parents, the next she doesn't. You know, her whole life is in flux because of the Doctor. And, you know, and then going into the whole River Song arc, you know, there's so much going on with Amy. And I think that makes her a really interesting character. I think there's something so believable about Amy Pond and the 11th Doctor's relationship. They really do feel like best friends. I think it's probably the most like authentic friendship the show's had. Maybe not until like the 13th Doctor and Yaz. You know, when you can tell that these in-person friendships are so strong that they just bleed onto screen. You can tell these two actors just really enjoy being around each other. And you can tell they're having the time of their life. Also, there's those great moments in The Girl Who Waited. That's another real standout episode for Amy Pond. I just really love this time period of Doctor Who. This is where I really became a massive fan. So of course, I have a bit more of a bias to Amy Pond. Next up is Rory Williams. Sorry, you are a man, so you're always ranked lower. I clearly have a problem with men. For some reason with the companion ranking videos, I've always put the men down the bottom. And I'm sorry. Rory's fine. I think Arthur Darvill plays it really well in the sense that he is a bit of an idiot. He's sweet and he's funny, and I can see why Amy likes him, but I can also find his character to be a bit annoying. Love Arthur, but the actual character can be a bit eh. But the stuff like the Lone Centurion is really great, even though I don't really necessarily buy him as a Roman soldier. But you know, that story of that sacrifice is really nice, and how that somewhat stays in the back of his mind as well. But I think this is something that Stephen Moffat does really well with these two characters, is that their relationship is rocky and it has its ups and downs, but at their core, they still really love each other and they're happy to work on their problems to get there. And I think that's what makes them so believable. So for that reason, I really do like them as a pairing. Next up, we have River Song. I put her at the best of the best. Yes, you could say she counts as a series regular rather than a companion, but I just want to talk about River Song because I love her. I am the #1 River Song fan. I have loved her since her first appearance up until her last. There is something about Alex Kingston that is so incredible. She's one of those actors that just commands presence on screen. You know, I met her once at a convention many years ago and I was just like, I'm in the presence of like a god. You know, she is so funny and friendly and beautiful, and that hair. It was just like like a religious experience for me. And yeah, I just think Alex Kingston is just one of those actors. I think Stephen Moffat, whoever was casting this time, was it Andy Pryor still? I'm not sure. But they just happened to get the best of the best at this time period, and everything just worked out. You know, everything was firing on all cylinders, and Alex Kingston is incredible. And I think this is something that Stephen Moffat does where, you know, he's telling a story about introducing River Song and she dies. And then we slowly get to know her backwards. And it's that type of storytelling that's interesting to me, especially because this is a time travel show. But, you know, in the classic series, it didn't really go into that too much. The closest it ever got was we were introduced to Mel later on, so we never got a real introduction to her. So we meet her out of order as an audience member, but the Doctor doesn't technically meet her out of order. But yeah, I find her character funny and cool, and I love every second that she's on screen. I am a massive River Song defender for sure. Next up, we have Clara Oswald. I've put her in the great category. I definitely prefer Clara with Peter Capaldi. I think her time with Matt Smith was more focused on the Impossible Girl arc, and I've never been obsessed with that storyline. I think it was interesting as it went along, and I think it paid off well. I was happy with the actual story itself, but I think I prefer the story of her slowly becoming the Doctor. I think the tension between the 12th Doctor and Clara is just a lot more adult and more interesting, and I like what they're trying to do with it. Jenna Coleman as well is an incredible actor, another incredible find for Doctor Who. You know, she's gone on to have a massive career after Doctor Who as well because she is brilliant. And I like that she doesn't allow the Doctor being a Time Lord to stop her from being like, no, we're on equal levels here. You know, this is a two-way relationship. I'm not just doing as I'm told. And I think that is powerful in itself. You know, that idea that, you know, the companion has to say, yes, Doctor, I'll do this, Doctor. That's in the past with Clara. Clara is on equal level with the Doctor, and that's what makes their relationship great. Next up is Nardole. Not for me. I personally don't find Matt Lucas very funny. I know he's a very popular actor, you know, so it's great that other people seem to like what he does. His sense of humor just isn't compatible with mine, you know. Humor is subjective, and, you know, it's just not what I find funny. I find Nardole to be quite annoying, and he just rubs me up the wrong way every time. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I can't even think of one scene that I like of him in it. I just really wish Nardole wasn't there. You know, I think I would have liked Series 10 even more if he just was not around. I really don't even think about Nardole until like it comes up in situations like this, and I'm like, oh yeah, he existed. You know, I erase him from my mind when I think of Series 10. I think of Bill, and I think of Missy, and I think of Peter Capaldi, and that's about it, you know. Next up is Bill Potts. I've put Bill in the good category, and I feel awful about that because she's so good. But if you're comparing her to someone like Donna Noble or like Martha Jones, like she isn't as high up for me. And I think it's probably because I didn't really love the conclusion of her story on Doctor Who. I like that, you know, she got to travel around the universe with her girlfriend and stuff like that. That's fine. But, you know, I just didn't really care for Twice Upon a Time. And that Twice Upon a Time in itself just felt like an overhang that really didn't need to happen. I felt like the season kind of wrapped itself up, and then there was just a bit more for some reason. It was like a season of American Horror Story. That finale is always the worst part. But I really do love Bill and the 12th Doctor's relationship. I like that it does the professor and student relationship again, but this time it feels less problematic compared to the Doctor and Leela, and not as manipulative as the 7th Doctor and Ace. It feels more of a collaboration between the two of them. You know, they seem to have a really solid relationship there. I also think it's nice to have a gay companion. You know, I'm never going to say no to that. I think a big reason why I'm not a huge fan of her ending is because, you know, she travels off into the universe with Puddle Girl, and I don't think as an audience we really got to see that relationship between them blossom. And I think if we did, I think I would have liked that more. But it just felt like she just fell in love with some person she just met, and now we're supposed to really care about that. But, you know, if she's happy, then great. You know, shout out to the lesbians. We love the lesbians. Go travel the universe with a puddle. You know, good for you, babe. Next up, we have Graham. I put Graham in the great category. I think Bradley Walsh, like Catherine Tate, two incredible comedic actors, but they can also do the dramatic stuff as well. And he feels like a real person. He feels like a very relatable character, and he's really funny. And I think he has a really good run throughout the whole show. Even though he had a very small part in Jodie's regeneration story, The Power of the Doctor, even his little moments flirting with Ace and stuff like that just really makes him so much fun. He manages to make scenes shine. And when I think of Graham, I think of the soft shoe shuffle and stuff like that. He has a lot of funny little moments in there. And that's the thing as well, his relationship with Grace on screen was so short, but it felt so real. And it felt like we knew Grace for a long time, even though we really didn't see her much on screen. And I think that goes to show how good these two actors were together on screen. And the script itself had stuff to say for them and it established them in a small amount of time and made you feel for them. When Grace dies, you really feel that, and you can feel the pain that Graham holds throughout the whole season. And I really just love him. He's great. Next up, we have Ryan Sinclair. I think Ryan is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of his character. I just find that he's delivering every line like he's a bit bored. But yeah, I found like some of his decisions as a character to be questionable. I was never a huge fan of him like wielding a gun in the Ghost Monument. But then again, that's kind of hypocritical, isn't it? Because I always like that picture of Nissa with a gun. But that's because it makes me laugh, because it's so wrong. It's so like ridiculous. Or the episode with the Pating, and he's like trying to convince that guy to have a baby even though he doesn't want to have children. I just don't love that type of messaging. But he does have his funny moments in that, so he's fine. And yeah, he's okay. He's definitely on the same level as Rory for me. Next up, we have Yasmin Khan, Yaz. I put her in the good category. I would definitely put her up against Bill. I think they're very much on the same level. These are two people who are very, very, very good, but they just haven't got up that next bit. I think what makes Yaz so great is her relationship with the 13th Doctor. You can tell that they really do get along in real life, and you can tell that Yaz is just so happy to be there. And I think out of all of the companions, she's clearly the one who cares about the Doctor the most. When she is left behind, she's the one who's actively trying to investigate and find her because she wants to go back. She's someone who never wants to leave the Doctor. She's fallen in love with this life and she doesn't want to go back to her real life at all. And I just recently listened to Vampire Weekend, the first of the Big Finish audios of the 13th Doctor and Yaz, and they're just so great on it together. They are so much fun. I really just think those two on screen are just excellent. And I wish we had a full season of just them two. I don't think we needed Dan. I think Yaz and the Doctor together is excellent. I think it's clear that Mandip is playing being in love with the Doctor probably from series 12 onwards. I don't think I saw it in series 11. I think other people might have. I think when we're talking about the haunting of Villa Diodati, there's a scene where she's talking to someone about, being in love with like a lovable weirdo and stuff like that. And it's very clear she's talking about the Doctor. And in that moment, I was like, oh, I see it. I really see what people online are talking about now. Whereas before that, I was starting to think, all right, maybe this is a bit of fan stuff, how everybody thought like Sherlock and John from BBC Sherlock were in love with each other and we're going to make out on screen any second now. I thought maybe it's a bit that. It's the fans wanting something that's not going to happen on screen. But in that moment, I thought, oh, maybe they will go down that road. And, I'm really happy they did. Although I've said in previous videos, I think I would have liked if they had a little smooch. Just one little smooch. But, I still think they're clearly two people who are very much in love with each other. Maybe not in love with each other, but clearly, I think Yaz is definitely in love with the Doctor. I think the Doctor is very interested in Yaz. Is the Doctor capable of love in the same way that humans are? I don't know. But I think they clearly do have a real connection. And I would have liked to see it explored more. And I think it probably would have been if there was another season. I think we would have seen something more blossom if there was a 4th season with Jodie and Yaz. That would have been sick. But I'm happy with the story that was told. I just, of course, want more of it. I'm greedy. I want more. Sorry about it. Next up is Dan, and unfortunately, dude, he is not for me. I think they were trying to replicate the success they had with Bradley Walsh, but I don't think that really paid off for them. I don't think Flux needed another companion. I don't think Dan really adds anything to the show. I think it would have worked if it was just the Doctor and Yaz and they met people along the way and that's it. I think there's some funny moments, but I think they're more funny because we've turned them into memes. You know, like the picture of Dan holding a wok, or, you know, what's the point of being alive? You know, stuff like that. I think that's more of the fans making him into something that he's not, just because his character just doesn't have as much to it. I don't know. I think the character's fleshed out enough, but I'm just not really excited by poor Dan. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm sorry. Next up, we have Ruby Sunday. I've put her in the okay category. I feel a bit mean for that, but I think she probably is on the level as these ones. I think Millie Gibson is a really great actor. Stuff like these standalone episodes like 73 Yards and Lucky Day, you know, she really proves that she can hold the show on her own. But I find her story arc to be confusing, and I don't really love her in the way that I thought I would. I think in the past, I would have argued like the Jodie Whittaker era companions weren't as fleshed out as I would have liked them to have been. But I think when we get to this Russell T Davies 2 era, I don't think they really fleshed out that deeply either, because there's just not enough time. But then again, we'll go back to what we were talking about, Graham and Grace, and they barely have any screen time together, but you feel that relationship is real. So I think runtime or episode count doesn't overly matter too much. It's how you use that time. What is your priorities in your storytelling? And with a show like Doctor Who, where we're jumping from planet to planet to planet and we're doing this, that, and the other thing in different time zones, if the emphasis is more on that rather than the characters, they're going to feel more thin. I think whenever they did try to add stuff to Ruby's character, it either didn't get paid off or it kind of just didn't interest me. And I think that's just why she lands there for me. And last, we have Belinda Chandra. I really, really, really want to put her in the good category, but I can't on good conscience put her next to Bill and Yaz. That's insane. I think the Belinda we met in the first 3 episodes of her season is a companion that really excites me, and she would instantly be in the good category. Potentially even in the great category. She was electric. She was interesting. I liked her dynamic with the Doctor where they fought, and she called him out on stuff that he was doing. And I think that's really important for a companion in Doctor Who, especially in the new series. You know, the Doctor can't get away with all of his nonsense. And that's what grounds him. That's what grounds the companion. It's what grounds the show, and it makes it more interesting. When you've got companions who are like, I love you, Doctor, and that's it, not as interesting to me. We've seen it. I want to see a little bit more fire. And we got that in the first half. But in the second half, that Belinda we met disappeared. You know, even by the time we're in the Interstellar Song Contest, you know, the Doctor is beating the hell out of someone and she's saying, oh, you're so amazing, Doctor. When did this happen? Because we didn't see it on screen. It felt like Stockholm Syndrome, like she completely changed into another character. You know, this wasn't the Belinda we met in those first 3 episodes. It's like Lucky Day happened and the Doctor and Belinda disappeared and had a few adventures. They clearly fell in love and they were best mates. And they came back and that character development, we never saw it on screen. I just don't know who Belinda Chandra is. And what's even worse is the finale completely erases her altogether. And now she's some random person that she doesn't even know. The person that we met is erased. And some person now who is living a completely different life. What happened to her roommates? You know, what happened to all these people? What happened to her life? I don't know who Belinda Chandra is anymore. And that's why I just can't put her any higher than I have. And it sucks because I think she would have been one of the greats, easily one of the greats. But the show has been cut short and her time on the show has been cut short. And it's really, really grim. Well, that was a really fun way of ending this video. All right, so let's look at the ranking list. So I'm not surprised we got Donna, Amy, and River up the top. They're my favorites. They always have been, and they always will be. I also think as you get older with the show and you've seen it for so long, maybe you become more critical as you get older. Maybe characters like Rose and Martha don't deserve to be right up the top. But for me, I feel like their characters are so rich. And I think as the show went on and episode count reduced, and there was less of a focus on characters and more of a focus on sci-fi storytelling, the characters became a bit thinner. So they feel a bit more like the classic series, where you meet them, you get a lot of backstory, and then they become a bit generic. And I think that's why you get characters like Bill and Yaz who go a bit higher up, because their interactions with the Doctor is something a little bit different. But when you get someone like Dan, who's a very generic companion, it's just not as thrilling. He's just another human being who gets tagged along with a Doctor, and that's about it. I think my biggest takeaway of this ranking list is I'm sad that Belinda's so low. And I think I hate men. Yeah, I think I don't like men anymore because they're all at the bottom. Just kidding, I like men, I'm a homosexual, whatever. Anyway, thank you for joining me on this journey where I've been ranking every single Doctor Who companion. Let me know what you think of my list in the comment section below. Tell me how wrong I am. I love to hear it. I like to be ridiculed. Just kidding. Be nice to me, please. I'm just a little baby. I'm a 30-year-old baby. Be nice to me. Also guys, sorry about this horrible setup. I've just moved into a new apartment, so I haven't got my studio set up yet, which just means I haven't put my TARDIS screen up right. So I'm sitting on my couch with a light just shone onto my face. It is a bit aggressive, but it'll get better. Stay tuned. Please come back. All right, have a nice day. Bye. Ooh, okay. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Nez YouTube channel.